Welcome back to another episode of Drilling Deeper. I'm Kevin Yannick, editor-in-chief of Pit and Quarry magazine. Today we're going to play an interview we had last month with Richard Luck, the new president of Luck Companies. Many of you listeners out there, if you're familiar with Pit and Quarry, you know we've been covering Luck Stone and Luck Companies for a number of years. The company's been around for more than 100 itself, almost as old as Pit and Quarry. And we had the opportunity to sit down with their brand new president as Luck Companies announced in November that Richard Luck would be taking over as Luck Company's president. He's the fourth generation president of the company based in Virginia. And Luck's got a lot of interesting stories taking place continuously within the company. They recently moved into South Carolina and Georgia, and they're continuously doing things that are innovative with equipment and technology. We've talked on this program before about their autonomous hauling project at the Bull Run plant in Virginia, and I'm always interested to hear what's transpiring at Luck Stone, and they're always very willing to share their perspective and visit with Pit and Quarry, and it's been a great partnership over the years with their company leaders. But today we've got Richard Luck and a pretty lengthy interview to play with him. Again, this took place in January, so about a month ago, as we're dropping this on February 11th, and really wanted to sit down with Richard and kind of talk about a range of topics. We talked about ultimately what prepared him for this moment in time to kind of step up and become the president of Luck Companies. His predecessor in the company's his father, and you know there's a long history of family leadership going all the way back to Charles Luck Jr. Actually, the three Luck family leaders before Richard Luck are all in the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame. So, really unique opportunity and a unique family with a unique story. So it's interesting to hear, as we'll play in a bit, what Richard and his experience was like as he was growing up in the family business, and some of the things that were done, you know, between him and his dad, his relationship with company leaders, and ultimately how that prepared him for the company. You'll hear too how some of the experience he gathered outside of Luck ultimately prepared him for leadership within the company, and that's toward the front end of our interview today. We also talked a little bit about the leadership that's surrounding Richard Luck at the company. He's moving up at a time too when others within the company are being elevated in the ranks. I thought it was kind of interesting to hear, and I guess I hadn't really correlated this myself, that, you know, when you think about the third generation leadership, and that being Charlie Luck IV, who's still there in some capacity at the company, you know, there's many people within the upper ranks of the company, some of the leaders there who kind of came up with Charlie, and they kind of worked hand in hand to lead the company in its third generation. And now, as Richard's kind of telling it, you're going to hear how many company leaders are moving on up at the same time as him. So he'll name some of them and kind of walk us through what's happening in tandem with his own new appointment. And we also, of course, talked about equipment and technology with Richard during our interview and some of the projects they're involved in. He'll get into the autonomous hauling project and some of the collaboration that took place among the people there at Luck Stone, and that's an exciting endeavor. And safety, we'll bring it home today with some discussion on safety and what that ultimately means to Richard Luck and those at Luck Stone. So without further ado, let's play our interview with Richard Luck. Again, this took place in mid-January, and let's roll it.
Well, Richard, appreciate you joining us today. Congratulations on your new role as president of Luck Companies.
Thanks, Kevin. Super excited to be here and excited for our conversation today.
I've had the opportunity to visit with you once before, and I've heard your story a little bit. You know, I know our viewers and some of our listeners out there, you know, maybe they're not familiar with you. I think everyone kind of in the aggregate space knows Luck Stone to a degree. You guys, you're obviously coming into the fourth generation of family leadership at Luck Companies now, Richard. So, you know, if you can, tell us what it was like, you know, growing up in the family business. You know, I was always wondering too, with family companies, is there ever pressure, you know, on the sons or daughters to follow in the footsteps of the mothers or fathers? So, you know, what's your experience been like to date?
Yeah. So, you know, I think growing up in a family business is just such a unique, special opportunity. And so when I think back on my childhood was filled with exposure to our business. And so, you know, when I think about my parents, they brought us around the company all the time. So if dad, you know, in the summers, if dad had something going on, I would ride with him, and they'd drop me off in the scale office, and I would sit there and pass tickets out the window to haulers. Or when we were super young, we'd come over to the quarry on the weekends and climb up and down the piles with dad. You know, and so there's just kind of all these snapshot memories I have of growing up being at our locations. But I think the thing that my parents really did a great job with us around was they did a great job of exposing us to our people. And so when I was young, I always kind of felt like a lot of our folks at the company were sort of like distant aunts and uncles to me. So I was always running through the hallways at the office and knew many people that worked at Luck, and that kind of created this emotional connection for me to our people. And so that I think is where my love for our company started from. You know, I think as a little boy, it's easy to be excited about the equipment and the processing and blasting and all of those things that we do. But it was really the people and their connection to myself personally, their mentorship of me, or just kind of feeling like extended family that helped me fall in love with the place. And so, you know, when we were growing up, my parents did a wonderful job of. I've got two sisters, and I think my parents did just a phenomenal job of exposing us to the business. And so they talked a lot about there's kind of two paths. There's one path is ownership and one path is leadership. And they said, hey, you know, because of the place you've been born in, you have a responsibility that is around ownership, and we need to develop you for that responsibility of ownership. But leadership and or working in the business is a total choice, you know. And our hope for parents, our hope as parents of the three of you all, is that you chase your own dreams, chase your own passions, and that you find a place where you can go have a wonderful life of enjoying your work somewhere. And so they never really put pressure on me or my sisters to work at the company. And so we never felt that. And we actually worked really hard to come up with some family rules around working outside the business before coming back here to really drive towards kind of individual independence for each one of us. But for me, it was just, I always loved our company. I loved our company. I loved our people. I wanted to be here, even during those times away after college, away from the business. And so I never felt pressure really until the day I came and started at the company. And when came in the first day and started at the company, that's when you could kind of feel the pressure of, wow, I've made the choice to be here. And with that, you know, comes a certain expectation.
Richard, talking to people over the years just about, you know, family business, you know, your case, obviously, you know, you've been around it a long time. You know, I think in your company's case, you make a point to get experience elsewhere to understand, well, maybe how other people do things, how other companies run, you know, what works, what doesn't. So what were your other experiences like aside from Luck? And then how do you feel like those kind of prepared you when you joined the company?
Yeah. I kind of got a two-part answer to that one. So, you know, I think so. Growing up, my parents got us working with a family business consultant, and with that, they took our family on this journey around how we think about the company. And so that was really where my personal developments, I'd say, started. And so we worked with this advisor to talk about all different things about our company, things about, you know, how do we think about working in the company, how do we think about spouses working in the company, how do we think about consolidated ownership versus members of the family owning it that don't work in the business, you know. And so we started talking about these things when I was in like middle school. And we went on a process as a family uh, over our whole lives where we defined these beliefs and philosophies. And I think that was really some of my most developmental experiences that I had, because it grounded me in these beliefs of, you know, we're here to serve the business. The business isn't here to serve us, and similar philosophies like that we aligned around. And so, you know, when we were young, that was the development we were doing. And one of those kind of beliefs or philosophies is that we would be best prepared to come to the business if we had worked elsewhere. And so what I chose to do when I finished up college at VMI is I went and I joined a program called Teach for America. And so Teach for America places you in as a teacher in Title I schools. So I was a high school pre-calculus and algebra 2 teacher in a Title I school in Charlotte. And then post that experience, came back to Richmond and started a nonprofit that worked with low income entrepreneurs to help them kind of become self-sustaining independent business owners. And so those two experiences for me were highly developmental. And when I think about like why I chose them, it was because I believe so deeply in our mission that we have at the company to ignite human potential. So I was looking at this kind of 3 to 5 year period prior to coming back to the company and saying, gosh, what can I do to ignite human potential? That's what my family, I personally believe in. And kind of the two paths that I chose were teaching and nonprofit work. And then so I did that, and then about 10 years ago started here at Luck.
Yeah, so everything you're describing right there, Richard, I mean, that's almost one layer of preparation or one series of steps. Then there's, working with your dad, working with people at the company to kind of build yourself up to arrive to this moment here in 2025 where you're president. So I know we've talked before too about, you and your dad and, that process to prepare you for, for this moment, for this leadership role. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the preparation you took. I'm guessing your dad was instrumental in some of that. I guess what does it take ultimately to become the fourth generation leader of a family business beyond some of those early things?
Yeah, so we have a pretty robust succession program kind of across our company. And so, dad's thinking about succession all the time for his role, just as all of our other senior officers are thinking about succession for their roles. And so when I came into the company, dad was saying, hey, 10, 12, 13 years from now, I want to be stepping into a different role. And so I just think how cool that is that he was progressively thinking that far down the road. And he was saying, when 10 or 12 years get here, I want to be able to select from two or three people a potential candidate. And then he said, Richard's starting in the company, and I want him to have every opportunity to be one of those candidates. And we need to craft a development plan to get him kind of technically and leadership wise, all the experiences that he needs to be ready to be one of those candidates. And then he has to go out there and work and show up and lead and execute and have results that then kind of push him to the next step. And so that was a super cool orientation. It was a really cool orientation for me because it felt like I knew the whole time that I was on a path getting exposure to the things that I would need to have exposure to if I were ever to be in that role. But what I think was the coolest thing about all of this is that the company wanted me to be successful. Our associates wanted me to be successful. I can't tell you how many people told me. I'm like one of my favorite stories is I first started. I worked at our Leesburg plant, and so I was out in the field in all elements of our site for a couple of years, learning the operations of our quarries, and then one of the first couple weeks one of the associates there was talking to me and he was like, hey man, I love this company so much and I want my kids to work here. And so I feel like it's my job to teach you everything I know so that you can do a good job running this place and keeping it a family business. And I was like, man, that is so cool that that was his orientation. He didn't have this orientation of, oh, this guy's entitled or, oh, this is like the silver spoon, or it was more of this kind of rallying call to support me personally in my success so that we could keep what's so special about Luck Stone, which is the fact that it's a family owned and operated business that the family is deeply invested in the culture and the impact that it has. That's what people care about. And that's what kind of I represented as I was starting in the company. And people hoped that was kind of how I thought. It is how I think. And so when they saw that that's how I think, it got them excited to support my journey. And so I kind of felt like I was welcomed like that in all the different steps that I've taken since I've been here. And I've gotten a chance to work in, uh, Northern Virginia all the way down to Atlanta with our associates, with our customers and industry. And through all of that, I feel like that's how I've been welcomed across the board. And that has been so helpful and inspiring to me and just kind of continue to make me fall even more in love with our people and what we're doing here.
What does it mean to you at the end of the day, Richard, to kind of cross the finish line in terms of getting the presidency role here at Luck Companies? I mean, obviously there's so much more work to go. I mean, you're at the start of things, the start of a journey in a way, but you talk about those sorts of conversations you have across the company, people, rooting for you, rallying for you. That's got to mean so much at the end of the day that you did some of the work to get there, and then people were helping you in your journey as well.
Yeah. I mean, this has been obviously like a lifelong goal, lifelong dream of mine. But the dream wasn't to have a title or to sit in that role. The dream is to be the steward of what we've created here, right? So when we think about our family, we think about Luck Stone or Luck Companies. It's really our medium to make a difference in the world. That's why we have a mission of igniting human potential, because when we think about the company, we lens the company as our vehicle to activate igniting human potential. And so when I think about the role that I'm in, I feel such a sense of responsibility to steward that. to believe in that, to keep our culture strong, to make sure that that's always our North Star, but then also to kind of build upon it and continuously improve, and do it with more and more people. And so that's just unbelievably exciting to me, to our family, yeah, and to everyone within our company, I believe.
Richard, beyond you, Luck Companies has made a series of other announcements related to leadership positions. There's a lot of great people in the company, a lot of excellent leaders who've proven themselves. What other announcements were made in tandem with your promotion, your appointment?
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting. My dad's 64, and my dad has a really strong senior leadership team around him, but they're all generally his age. And so, kind of dad and his peer group are all entering this retirement window in this next 2 years. And so people like a John McGore, our Luckstone president, a John Pullen, our chief growth officer, a Roy Goodman, our chief financial officer, Wanda Ortwine, our chief family officer, really like all of dad's kind of direct reports, kind of chief senior officer roles that have sat around him for a long time, are in a 2 year period retiring. And what I think is just so something we're super proud about is 10 years ago we saw that coming. And so 10 years ago we got really intentional with our succession planning work, and we hired people that could grow into those roles. We identified internal candidates that could grow into those roles. And over 10 years, we've been working really hard on the succession program. And so now when I think about myself and the future team that's coming, we have a lot of folks in their mid 40s that are stepping into roles, and they've worked here for 20 years and they've got 20 left. And I'm like, I cannot believe that we have leaders that are as values aligned as they are, believe in our mission and culture, and are as technically as talented as they are, that have worked with us for 20 years and have 20 years left. I mean, that is just so exciting. And so, when I think about my dad and his team, you know, they've kind of hit the ultimate goal, right? The ultimate goal is to steward this place, make it better, and then set it up for success for the next generation to take it to further places. And they have done that, right? Like they're transitioning it in a spot where our culture is the strongest it's ever been. The opportunities ahead of us are the strongest they've ever been. We're financially the strongest we've ever been, and we've got some of the most sophisticated leaders we've ever had. And so, yeah, when I think about my career, if I can pass it to the next generation uh, in that same way, that is like the ultimate goal.
Richard, what can people expect? I'm imagining your team has an understanding of your strengths and kind of your style, how you exude leadership. I'm curious if you could share some of your approach on that front, and then maybe secondarily, just talking a little bit more about your experiences on the outside and on the inside. Over the last 10 years at Luckstone, Luck Companies. How do you feel like the company prepared you for today to arrive to this leadership moment?
Yeah, yeah. So when I think about kind of like the inside and outside, what's prepared me, yeah, I don't think there's not these singular events, right? It's more of like a process over time. And so I go back in my life as I think about outside of luck. Some people know, some people don't, but on my mom's side, her dad is Richard Petty. So my grandfather is Richard Petty. And so there was a family business on both sides of my family growing up. So there's Richard Petty Motorsports or Petty Enterprises, and then there was Luck Stone. And so when I think about just my early childhood kind of dinner conversations, Christmas conversations, family business was always a piece of that. Dynamics in family business was always a piece of that in both of my families. Taking care of your people was always a dynamic there. And so I think with having family businesses on both sides, I was just always exposed to what was going on in both of them. Everything from kind of tactically to financially to leadership wise. And so I think that was super developmental for me. I then had an opportunity to go to Virginia Military Institute for college and really kind of be grounded in some of the discipline and leadership that kind of the military lifestyle you know it develops. So I think that was really developmental for me. I think about the stories I was telling about being a high school teacher and working in the nonprofit world. That was like really culturally eye-opening and culturally, I guess, from a beliefs and philosophies that really opened my mind in a meaningful way. Um, yeah, I think being in teaching in the nonprofit world, specifically teaching, you have to take complex topics and make them simple. I feel like that really helped me kind of hone that skill. And then all of those things together, I think, gave me this ability to connect across a wide range of folks, right? So growing up on the petty side, uh, be in the race shop, and then you could go to a sponsor dinner. And growing up on the luck side, you could be in the quarry, and then you could go to a banking dinner or whatever it was. And so there was always this kind of ability to kind of float across all spectrums or all demographics that I really enjoy and get a lot of energy out of, and love the individualism across the board that kind of gives me exposure to. Um, so I think all those experiences, some way, shape, or form, kind of made me who I am. And then I think just stylistically, like I know that the feedback I get is that I'm very passionate, energetic, creative, have a desire for continuous improvement, um, all of those things. Um, but I would say when I think about our family's history, just like your families, you have grandparents, parents, and yourself, and there's these things that you hold true in family lineage that passes from one generation to the next. And so when I think about my family, there's three things that have always been true. The number one is that the care for our people, right? Like people is our purpose. People is what's always driven the senior leadership in the family around why we're doing what we're doing. The second is the desire to grow. The desire of grow comes from the ability to support more people. And then third is this idea of sophistication, innovation, progressiveness that our families just always had. They've always had that desire to push the envelope, to be on the leading edge, to set a standard, to do things excellently. And so those three things, a focus on people, focus on growth, and a focus on uh, sophistication, progressiveness, innovation. Those are all those things that are deeply who I am. How I go about doing that might be very different than dad or my grandfather. But those three things have always been core to all the leaders that have come into our business here.
Richard, one of the unique things, or things at least I would say I find interesting about the history of your company, is just kind of the rapport and the connectedness between generations. So you go all the way back to I guess, your great grandfather. I mean, Charles Luck Jr. I mean, passing things down the line. It seems like there always had to be long conversations, years of efforts to work with each other. Father to son. And then passing it on from generation. So do you have a sense? Maybe you could take us back a little bit based on what you know from your grandfather's experience. Excuse me, Charles Luck III, right? Um, to your dad Charlie, and then what has it been like working alongside your dad, having him there, and I guess just curious too, what's it going to be like day to day going forward? Because I think your dad's still involved as chairman. You're taking on a different role here, but what's the future look like between you and your father?
Yeah, I think we're entering like just some of the sweetest time that the company gets. When you have two family leaders that are going through transition, if you can do it well, it should bring the best times for the company. And so when I think about my dad and my grandpa, the way they described that was that my grandpa had all this wisdom, experience, historical knowledge, and my dad had this kind of fresh, youthful, sophisticated, digital at the time, whatever, perspective that he was bringing and pairing with my grandpa. And then there was two of them, so they got to touch the company from a family perspective double as much, and they got to have the most well-rounded perspective that you could ever have from the wisdom and youthfulness. And so in that, if the relationship is healthy and you can be at a kind of peer adult to adult uh healthy dialogue, then it's great. When it becomes adult child, or the relationship's not good, it can cause a lot of dysfunction across the business. But when the relationship is good and there's high respect, and uh, and you're rowing the boat in the same direction and influencing and giving and taking, then it's actually this really beautiful spot. And so I feel like dad and I are kind of entering that space. I think he honors my perspective, and I honor his perspective. We when we have something that we're seeing things differently on, we call it out. We even have brought facilitators in to kind of help us work through a couple things that we didn't see eye to eye on. And but all the time we are being very intentional around how are we showing up together, aligned, uh, in order to lead this company aligned. And that's super fun. I'm learning from him every single day. I know he's learning from me every single day. And then one of the things he says all the time, and I love it, it's like when people have all the same information, then they generally align around the same outcome or the same answer. What happens is when people have different sets of information that or lenses on things, then they might get stuck in a debate. And so I think that's one thing that we're really trying to work hard on is how do he and I get the same level of same information? Because when our belief systems and philosophies are so aligned, if we have the same information, 99% of the time we're going to be making the same decision. It's when we don't have the same information that we're at risk of potentially thinking about a topic different.
Richard, just to stick on that for a second, do you feel like having, a prior generation there in hand with a next generation, Luckstone and Luck companies, does that help ease the transition for everybody at the company? Seeing, it's not such a drastic change when you're just seeing one leader step aside, another one steps in. I mean, it happens together.
Yeah, thanks a ton for asking that because that's been something that has been really purposeful in the way we've kind of designed this transition with so much of it happening at the same time. What we chose to do was kind of pace the retirements. And so we put people in roles a year or two before that retirement actually happened. And all of that was really an outcome of that 10-year forward thinking around succession and how to kind of successfully transition. And so what we're finding is that yes, we've had to move some current senior leaders into new roles, but their new roles are purposeful and their new roles are leveraging all their wisdom and skills. And then the incoming person is now stepping into the role with the senior uh, outgoing officer still there to support, but giving them good, healthy space. And absolutely, there's times where that causes some friction or confusion, but that benefits way outweigh the stumping our toe every once in a while to get settled. And I really, really credit my dad with that kind of orientation. And ultimately, what it's doing is it's leaving the officers that are retiring they're able to impart their wisdom, see the new person come in and be successful, and they can leave knowing that they're leaving it in a great spot. And the new person is stepping in the role, having a sidekick to say, how'd you handle this? How'd you handle this? What should I do about this? But with full empowerment to be in the role. And so that transition's been a really cool one to see. It's been costly, right? We're holding on to senior officers for, overlapping in some positions for a year or two, but it's something we've chosen to invest in, and we think that it's going to set the next generation up for huge success.
Richard, Luck's obviously involved in, a lot of different things. You're coming in here as the president of Luck Companies almost at the start of 2025. I guess that appointment was made in November, but do you have goals in your mind? I mean, goals that you shared with the company? When you think about priorities you want to set here early, in this new role for yourself, like what rises to the top of your list?
Yeah, so I think for me, I've got my long-term goals and then shorter-term goals.
Hmm.
So for me personally, my long-term goal is what we spoke about earlier. My long-term goal is to steward our culture, steward our business, sustain our business, so that future generations, so it can have an impact for generations to come, right? So if I can, in my career, and be passing this business off to my children and the future officers of the company for them to take on the next 30 or 40-year stretch, like that for sure is my long-term goal. Um, with the North Star being the focus on our impact, culture, and igniting human potential. So that's my long-term goal. But in the short term, we have lots of goals, and we're actually in a really cool window with all these transitions because right now we're developing our Vision 2030. So we're setting our 5-year goals we're currently developing the 5-year goals that we'll launch here shortly. And so when we do that, we look internally and externally. So we say what's going on externally, what's going on inside our walls, and we've talked about a lot of things going on inside our walls, right? So there's a ton of transition at the leadership level. We have a lot of new associates, and then in the last 5 to 10 years, we've grown from a medium-sized Virginia-based company to a larger size regional business. And so with that, come kind of a maturing and a reevaluating of all of our systems, processes, and areas to kind of match the scale, complexity, and scope that we've grown to. And so that's kind of like all the things that are going on. And then you got AI, and you've got the consolidation of our industry, and so you've got just a lot externally going on as well. And so when we think about all that, and where do we start focusing? Our number one goal is to kind of reignite our culture work that we've done here, with new leadership, new teams, a new family member, new associates. The last thing I would want to do is lose our way. And so we've got a really big 5-year initiative around intentionally activating our culture. We've got a great 5-year initiative around sustaining our Virginia footprint while expanding our southeast footprint. A lot of those opportunities we've already identified. They're in the pipeline, and it's about activating them, which is just so exciting. We have a focus on our digital work with trying to develop a culture that's ready to accept some AI-oriented opportunities as that kind of starts happening to us and all around us. And then kind of adapting our enterprise to match the scale, complexity, and scope that it currently is, as we evaluate teams, processes, structures, systems, all of that. So those are kind of our four main areas: our VBL culture, our growth, our digital work, and then what we're calling enterprise excellence. But it's really about adapting our system to the new scope, scale, and complexity that we've grown to. And those things are going to be a huge undertaking, but they are so exciting, and I have no doubt we're so well positioned to do each one of those 4 things incredibly well.
Richard, let's talk about technology and innovation a little bit. You guys, like you said earlier, at Luckstone, Luck Companies, you're always pressing the limits, wanting to find out the unknown, venture into the unknown. And the storyline we've been keeping tabs on here at Pit and Quarry is what you're doing at the Bull Run plant there in Virginia with the autonomous hauler, partnering with Caterpillar. Actually, you guys put out an announcement, I think it was toward the end of 24, about some successes there, and just thinking about everything that needs to come together there. Requires a lot of people, I would imagine, to work together to figure out how do you make the unknown a known probability or a possibility or a reality in your operations, Richard. So, what can you tell us about what's happening at Bull Run, and how did people kind of rally behind to ultimately make that a proven success with the autonomous hauler?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a project that we're so excited about at our company. I mean, we're so proud to have been selected as a partner with Cat to do this at our Bull Run site. And then I think why we're so excited about it is because we get to be a part of shaping the solution for the industry. We get to be a part of preparing our workforce to be ready to run a solution like this. We get to be a part of influencing the business case for the aggregates industry and for Caterpillar. And then it highlights our people. So when I think about many of the reasons why I think we were chosen, it was about our team giving and receiving feedback, being honest, being creative, providing resources to all do that on a test site. And so, it takes the whole team has to have that culture to explore and experiment like we are with something like this at one of our biggest sites. And so when I go up there and I see our team that's up there, one of the people, I like telling stories. So one of the stories I tell is the person that we've chosen to put in charge of this project on our side. His name's Rusty Minix. And 10 years ago, when I was at Leesburg, he was a foreman there, and I was eating Jimmy John's in a truck covered in dirt with Rusty Minix. And then fast forward 10 years, we're at the airport, and Caterpillar flies in their executive jet, and the executives get off, and Denise Johnson's there, and they're talking about autonomous trucks, and Rusty is standing up presenting everything we're doing on autonomous trucks, and just crushes it. And I'm like, man, when you think about igniting human potential, Rusty and I never would have thought that would have been where his life and career trajectory would have taken him 10 years ago, and then now he's doing that. And so you see these stories about people's progression, the things they're learning, the things they're innovating and leading around. They're just so impressive. And when I think about our company's history on the leading edge of technology, Yeah, I think we were one of the first to pioneer automation of plants. And so that was kind of in I believe, like the early 70s. My grandfather saw the Philip Morris cigarette facility here in Richmond. They had automated the production of cigarettes there. And so he went and he hired the electrical engineer and said, "Hey, how can you come do that on our chip plant?" Um, and they took part of our aggregates plant and interlocked it and automated it all. And so I think about what those people were saying back then. They were probably like, "Man, are we going to need people to run a plant?" Or a lot of the same questions we're asking now about the pit. They were probably asking about the plant when we were messing around doing that in the 70s. And so um, it's just so cool to have a mindset of continuous improvement and knowing that you're working on things that make all of our lives safer, more efficient, easier, more productive. And we get a chance to shape that, and our people get to grow and learn and be inspired while we're doing it. It's just it's just so cool.
Richard, when you talk about continuous improvement, I gotta assume that that will continue to apply to Luck Stone, Luck companies, and technology innovation being a part of that. At the magazine today within the industry, we talk about autonomous haul trucks quite a bit, AI, digital technology, automation, electrification. I mean, there's so much there. I mean, it's almost kind of hard to figure out where do you start or what do you venture into. So maybe just two questions. I mean, so do you envision Lux staying on the same path with the technology and the innovation? And if that's the case, what might be next? What are you exploring maybe beyond the autonomy or with the autonomy or else otherwise?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what's next for us, but I know when I think about kind of our focus is how do we develop a culture of people that think this way,
Mhm.
that like this way of thinking, that are progressive in this state, across the board, not just senior leaders, but all thousand of us think that way. And so we're trying to build a culture that's accepting, ready, and desires to live into the digital stage or the electrification stage or whatever the next stage is. And so, we're doing everything from as basic as it sounds. Every associate at Luck gets a company smartphone, right? So everybody has an iPhone. And so we made a choice to invest in everyone getting an iPhone because how can you develop a culture if you can't connect with them? How can they lead with data if you don't have a device to see data? How can they answer emails if they don't have a phone with their email on it? And so it's for us, it's about creating kind of this DNA around, um, we need our associates across the board to understand the power of data, understand the power of the digital world, and then pair it with their wisdom and experience. So we tell the stories all the time. We have so many great operators who can walk through a plant and say, "Hey, that crusher sounds a little different than it did 2 days ago. I know something's going on." And so that's still relevant. That's still correct. And when you pair that with uh, oil samples where you're getting metal shavings out of it, and you see data and sound, you can compare and maybe catch it 3 days before you could with just your ear, right? And so um, how can you blend kind of the human aspect, the digital aspect, and help everyone recognize that the best comes from the blended solution, right? And
Mhm.
so we're trying to do that at the most basic levels to the most sophisticated levels. So um, the more sophisticated stuff is the stuff that gets the press, right? Like the Caterpillar autonomous haul trucks or AI models on our sales side or whatever we're working on. Um, there's kind of that spectrum, but our goal is to focus on getting a culture that thinks that way. And then if we have a culture that thinks that way, the world's gonna create and have the next big thing, and we just want to be positioned to be ready to explore it and adapt it when it's ready. The autonomous felt like it was at that spot, right? It had been proven where they'd haul billions of tons of materials across the world. So the technology was proven. It was just about bringing it to our industry, understanding what it was right. So it felt like it was the right time for us to jump in there.
Richard, I don't know if I asked about AI in my last question, but is that actively within conversations at the company today and things you guys are exploring?
Yeah, it is. And AI means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's the Chat GPT generative AI, which is kind of your writing back and forth, but then there's also other types of AI. And so, I think what we know is that the computing power of the world is changing, and you're able to do a lot of different things. And so with us, what we're trying to say is, hey, how do we? There's going to be things we put into motion that are AI oriented, and then there's things the world's going to put into motion that we just have to learn how to use, right? So your PowerPoints and your Excels and all those things are going to have AI built into them. And so we need to have a culture that knows how to take advantage of those kind of external tools that are being built and done to us. But then we also have to look internally and say, what's unique to Luck that we can build and generate that's AI oriented? And those are more kind of aggregates oriented, things that are unique to Luck, things that we want to solve that we don't think an off the shelf solution is going to bring. And so for us, if we're saying, hey, sales forecasting by product at a plant is very important to us, so we can production plan to it. If that becomes a really important goal for us, we're saying, hey, how can we use AI models to be as predictive and as accurate with that sales forecasting? And could that be better than just account managers getting together and talking about what they think we're going to do next month? So those are the more of the use cases we're trying to point our AI modeling at first, versus something that we think the industry or external providers might create a solution for.
Richard, let's talk about the Luck Company's footprint a little bit too. You mentioned earlier something about Virginia and then expanding into the Southeast and the company's history. I mean, now 102 years of history here in 2025. The history really is rooted in Virginia, and we've seen the company venture into Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Actually, we just recently, I think within the last week or so, you guys made a huge announcement about South Carolina and some plans there in a few counties. So just wondering, what the future is. I think you mentioned something about sustaining Virginia while not sure what the words were you said, but venturing or exploring some other areas in the Southeast. So I guess where is Luck going to be as we look into the future years?
Yeah. So I think I can kind of speak to that on like a five-year look. So when I
Sure.
think about the 5-year look, we have so many opportunities in our 4-state footprint that we have visibility to. And so when it comes to growth, we really want to put those into action. And so, most of our capital, most of our attention is focused on that. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that we're not always present and active elsewhere, but that 4-state footprint is definitely our focus. And then when you think about kind of your question around Virginia, so many of the industry sites were started back in the 30s and 40s, and these quarries, they are depleting assets. They don't last forever, and many of both ours and competitors' sites over time are going to expire. And so,
Hmm.
we want to make sure that that we always stay grounded in our heritage footprint of Virginia, that we always have the right reserve base and the right capacity here in Virginia. And so that's definitely a priority of ours, that we need to be thinking 2 or 3 decades ahead to make sure we're planning now to make sure that Virginia's in a good spot. And then outside of that, we want to, we want to take what else we can and activate what we're doing North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And and so that's there's plenty of ambition and plenty of aggressiveness in that we are really excited about. And so that's going to stay our focus. Um,
Richard, maybe we just bring it home with safety. It's something we touch on every month in the magazine, and rather than ask something specific, I feel like safety sometimes means something differently to individuals. Companies go at safety and promoting and talking about safety in different ways. So, when you think about your own experience as it relates to safety and what that means at your company, what does it ultimately come down to for you?
yeah, I actually wish I had the date on this one, because I'm not sure how far back this started, but must have been sometime in like the 90s maybe. But we started what we called our values-based safety program, or value safety. We call it value safety. And really what that was is, prior to that, we had a very prescriptive, policy-driven kind of safety program. So don't use this tool, use this tool, do this, not that, and it basically a set of rules. But there's so many things that happen in an operation every day to create the right policy or the best practice for everything, and then teach and make sure everyone knows that each one of those things is incredibly difficult. And so we kind of changed our philosophy to what we call making the right choice. And it was this idea of, okay, let's go away from policies, let's go away from telling people exactly what they can and can't do, and let's move more towards empowerment of our people to make the right choice. And so then it became more of this teaching lesson around, okay, how do you teach people to identify hazards, and then what are different best choices they can make? How do they feel empowered to make the right choice? How do they feel empowered to shut the plant down, even if they are unsure if that's what they should do right now? How do they feel empowered to go buy the right safety tool versus prescribing the one tool? And so it was really this idea of building culture around empowerment at the local level to make the right choice. And I think we got a ton of traction out of that. That's still a deeply held belief that we have is this idea of making the right choice and empowering people to do that. And then we also have this idea that all incidents are preventable. And so those two things, you know, making the right choice and then all incidents are preventable are these two kind of foundational beliefs that we have. The all incidents are preventable is one that can be challenged at sometimes, because you can be like, well, hey, that deer ran out in front of me. Was that preventable? But man, just believing that that's the case lets you ask certain questions that you would never ask. So I'll give you an example. We had a high wall failure at our site in Atlanta. And so you can easily say, hey, high wall, we had a high wall failure. There must have been a crack or a fissure there, and freeze thaw event, and nothing we can do about it. Act of God. But if you believe that all incidents are preventable and you go investigate that, then you uncover all these different things. Like we could have been shooting the face in a different way. We could have had drill holes in a different position. We could have been digging the pile from a different angle. And so when you believe that all incidents are preventable and demand that uh, ask 5 whys to why it happened, it actually sets on a series of questioning that oftentimes leads to things that could be done differently. And so I love that type of thinking. And so, yeah, I think those kind of culturally are the two things we lean on the most, to ensure that we have the safety culture we have here. And I'll never forget, the first day I started at the company, we had a fatality, and it was actually, ironically, was at our Leesburg site as well. And there's nothing more devastating that you can go through as a family business or as a peer to someone or a friend to someone than going through that. And so our number one priority every day has to be coming to work and making sure we go home the exact way we came in. And I know our teams know that. I know our teams believe in loving, caring, and being your brother's keeper. And I know they talk about safety every day and live into it, but we don't prescribe how they live into it. We highlight the importance and we empower the right choices to be made. So,
Richard, we talked about technology prior to this safety conversation, but is there a blend between the two? Is there something that Luck is doing or exploring on the technology front that can make operations safer? Or are there any other unique approaches that Luck Stone is undertaking at this point to talk about safety or try to make things safer?
yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I referenced, like all of our associates now have a phone. So we have actually like a safety app that has a couple different things that people can plug in. So like one of them is any near misses or any incidences can go into that app, and then they can be shared and researched and all kind of mined for teams to share. And we share those proactively. So if there's an accident or an incident at basketball, the next morning, everyone across the company can see and learn from what happened. And it's not a punitive way at all. It's more of an information sharing so that we can all learn. And so when that's activated and you see that we've had 50 backing incidences this year, then maybe people start thinking more when they throw the thing in reverse,
Yeah.
and so it's got that. We have the ability to do what we call the talk, but it's basically the talk before the task. So if you're going into a job, kind of what tools do you need, what hazards are there, what elements are around the job. So it's kind of this framework that we call the talk to really prepare going into a job to make it safer. And so you can go on that app and look through, okay, I'm doing a 5.5 crusher rebuild. What all do I need? And you can just search it, and then it's all there for you to talk through with your team. And so super excited about being able to just we know what the right conversation is to have. It's just making it easy for our teams to have those conversations. And so hopefully by some of these digital solutions that we're trying to provide for our teams, it empowers them to have those conversations more frequently.
Well, we've covered probably every aspect of the industry we possibly could over the course of maybe 45 minutes, Richard. But as we're closing, anything else you wanna put out there? Anything we didn't touch on that's relevant to what's ahead for the company there?
Man, yeah, I mean, like you said, we did touch on a lot. I would just say, for any of our associates listening to this, this this kind of storyline might say something about me and my position, but it's really about kind of the next phase of our company, right? So we're 102 years old, and we're entering the next 100 years. And as we enter the next 100 years, we're going through this major transition, but the company's in a fantastic spot, right? We're in a phenomenal spot with our culture, with our leaders, financially. The industry's in a great spot, and it's just such an exciting time to be a part of the industry, such an exciting time to be a part of Luck Stone. And yeah, you almost have to kind of pinch yourself at the position we sit in. And with that position comes huge responsibility to do great things looking forward. And so just filled with all kinds of excitement for the future and gratitude for all the folks that have gone before to kind of set us up with where we currently are.
All right. Well, that was Richard Luck, everybody, the president of Luck Companies. And Richard, thank you again for being so gracious with your time and spending an hour with me to talk about a variety of topics as it pertains to your company and your own story. And I want to thank the team around you, the communications team that's always worked so well with Pit and Quarry for helping to bring that opportunity to life, not just for us here at the magazine, but for our listeners here today. If you want more from Richard Luck, we actually presented part 1 of our interview in written form in an article that appeared in the February edition of the magazine. We'll have a part 2 of that interview in the written form appearing in Pit and Quarry's March edition. That'll be one of our biggest issues of the year. So again, thank you to Richard. Thanks again to Luck Companies, and we look forward to seeing what transpires with the nation's largest family-owned aggregate producer, crushed stone producer, going forward. What can you expect on the next episode of Drilling Deeper? Jack Kapansky, Pit and Quarry's managing editor, is going to be getting together with representatives from Buffalo, the screen media manufacturer, to talk about a few different topics. We're going to have Joe and Christine Abramo, along with Max Davis from Buffalo, talking about the company's recent rebranding. It was previously and long known as Buffalo Wireworks, and they recently rebranded to Buffalo. We'll be hearing from Buffalo about the tech squad at the company and also what you can expect from Buffalo at the upcoming March 25th to 27th Ag 1 trade show in St. Louis. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Drilling Deeper. Until next time, see ya.